Oh man, we're pretty high up, Spidey. Yikes. Oh, welcome to another Down the Rabbit Hole video. I wanted to do kind of a shout out and a series of questions. I've done these before, and this time it's for a fella who is a big Spider-Man fan, right? So, I've been following along, sort of Alan Stewart's crowd who do, you know, the streaming stuff and all that kind of thing. There's one fella on there, Delboy. He actually does his own channel, delboy3K1's. Here's his channel, and I'll put a link down below. He has been really good at kind of the community thing, the kind of keeping people involved, and he does a weekly blog, and he does some retro gaming. And what I really like about Del is he is my generation of gamer. Like, he's from the 70s era gaming crowd. He understands what it was like for those first arcade machines to show up, and then the home PC experience in the UK. He's a British YouTuber, and he kind of broke my heart in the last couple of his vlogs because he's saying he likes to give shout-outs for people who have made questions and asked him things, made comments, etc. And he did say a couple of weeks ago, I like doing the shout-outs. Unfortunately, nobody ever shouts out me, so I'm doing so now. Go and check out delboy3K1 on YouTube if you want to have a more, what should I call, a more seasoned, long-term gaming perspective on stuff. He does do a lot of modern games as well. Kind of anything that's been remade, revamped, re-envisioned, he does those as well. And it's a lot of interesting stuff. And I thought to myself, okay, to do this correctly, me and Spidey, I'm going to wear my pseudo Spider-Man outfit and have on the joystick that was big in the UK back in the 80s for Del. I want to ask a bunch of questions, Del, because I've done this before for Alan Stewart, I've done this for Swifto, Weebob, a variety of various people in the community. I've asked them questions as a standalone video. I apologize I've never actually asked you questions on your vlog, but I figure everybody's doing that, and I felt the questions people were asking you were totally good, but I thought to myself, you know, I'm going to compile a bunch and make it as a video and ask Del 9 or 10 questions here, and just as you can in your vlog or whatever, give me answers. And if anybody else wants to chime in on these, this is not specific to Del. If any of you others have opinions, questions, remarks, please feel free. But some of these I've asked Alan and Swifto and Weebob as well, but some of these are also very specific to what Delboy's shtick is. He loves Spider-Man, loves Marvel movies. He also is into kind of physical media collections, you know, Blu-rays and that kind of thing. And so I've got some questions, and they are right here, Del. So let's start off with number 1. What is your favorite Spider-Man game? Both recent, let's say the last 10 years or so, and also retro, previous to 10 years from now. What has been your favorite Spider-Man games in the modern era and in the old days? Question 2. Were Marvel Comics as full of ads in the UK back in the day, back in the 70s and 80s, as they are here? Now, in North America, as a kid, I grew up, I started off being interested in Batman, but that got away from me because it wasn't like on TV. Then I got into Spider-Man, but what I found was a real problem with Marvel here is every story would span multiple issues, and you would turn about 2 pages and there'd be a full page ad. Turn another page, ooh, some more Spider-Man, and then there's another full page ad. And this was, for a kid who didn't have a lot of money, for me to be buying a comic book every week and getting 6 pages of story and 6 pages of ads was a little not what I liked. And I'm curious if Marvel in the UK had a similar ad structure or was a little more free breathing. A really good comparison that I have is when I lived in the UK, I really got into 2000 AD, the comic strip, because it came out on a weekly basis for like 35p, and there were almost no ads at all. There was maybe something on the back page, maybe one center sheet, and that was it. And they were typically promoting like a convention or something. They weren't really like bubblegum ads and jeans ads like there were in the North American comics. And I was really blown away. I was like, wow, here is this comic strip that comes out every week, like a full, 8, 12 page, 20 page, I can't remember, comic book with lots of really great characters, and there are almost no ads. And that blew my mind. And I was just like, yeah, I'm on board the UK comic scene, North American comic scene, at least Marvel and I think DC at the time. No, thank you. So, Del, I'm curious, back in, say, the 70s and 80s, were Spider-Man and the Hulk peppered full of ads because they were here in North America? Or was it a lot more streamlined? Because I really found 2000 AD quite an eye-opener. Question 3. This is one I've asked Alan before and a few others. Simon Butler of Ocean Software, developer back in the day of a lot of great titles, I listened to him once on a podcast, and he had a very interesting point. He knows a lot of old games, but he's also developing some new ones, independent titles of his own. And there was somebody had asked him a question about, why don't you like people who are into retro games? And he said something that I thought, that's a weird perspective. I'm curious what you think, Del. He said, video games is like getting a crossword from the newspaper and filling in all the words, then getting an eraser and rubbing them all out, and then filling in the crossword again. He thought it was pointless. It's like, you've played that game. Why are you going back to it? And I was like, but, well. So, Del, what's your take on Simon Butler's unusual analogy there? Is it like just playing the same crossword puzzle over and over again? What do you think? Next question. You love movie media, as I mentioned, Blu-rays and DVDs and all that kind of stuff. Were you around? You were around as far as age is concerned, but were you into that in the laserdisc era? Late 70s, early 80s. What were your thoughts about laserdiscs? Do you have any commentary on what that whole era of physical media was like? And here's another one that is also one that you've talked about. Physical media versions, 4K Blu-rays of shows. Star Trek the Motion Picture Director's Cut 4K, or Director's Edition 4K. The new one that came out. You love it. I don't have a 4K player, or TV, so I haven't really got into that one yet. I have watched the ever-living heck out of Star Trek the Motion Picture over the many years, including back in the theaters originally. What's your favorite version prior to the 4K Director's Edition release? Because there are very interesting twists and turns to what the theatrical original had, what the TV version did, what the Director's Edition on DVD about 15, 20 years ago came out. I got that. Which one is your favorite and why? Here's a little bit of a divisive one. To switch gear from Star Trek to Star Wars, I know you're very much into The Mandalorian. I'm currently watching the 3rd season here myself. The end of season 2, and this is a spoiler. If anybody hasn't watched Mandalorian season 2, I'm about to wreck something that I think it's been a year or so. People have talked the heck out of this. But be prepared. I'm going to spoil the end of season 2 here. Run away. There is a sequence where our heroes are in trouble and these stormtrooper droids are bashing down the door, and we're all like, oh no, how are they going to get out of this? Nothing they can do will save them. And then an X-Wing pulls into the hangar and a cloaked figure comes out, wastes all the droids with his green lightsaber, only to pull off his cloak and reveal it's Luke Skywalker. Digitized young version CGI'd Mark Hamill to make him look like he did circa Return of the Jedi era. Many people love that ending of that season. I don't. And to me, it's because it was Deus Ex Machina. Like, that is the first thing you learn in storytelling is don't use Deus Ex Machina. It is a bad trope. It is a bad way to do a show or a story. So when I saw that, I was like, well, that's a lot of fan service, and that's not a good story beat. But apparently everybody disagrees with me and says that was the best episode of The Mandalorian ever. And grown-up fans I've seen on YouTube moved to tears by that sequence. So Del, what did you think of that ending to season 2 of The Mandalorian? Another Star Wars question here. Generations have grown up knowing only Star Wars the Special Edition. That, to some people, is the most accessible version. That's what's on Disney+, that's what you can get on Blu-ray, etc., etc. The original theatrical cut is not impossible to get your hands on, but you got to jump through a few hoops or get one obscure DVD release, which I happen to have, and has the original cut on it, warts and all. Some of these viewers, I've watched them on YouTube, or these 20-somethings have done videos about, everybody goes on about the original theatrical cut being so much better than the special edition. I've watched it. Honestly, I think the special edition is better. What do you think, Del? What's your take on the original theatrical cut from not colored by our sort of nostalgic connection to it, but do you understand that a generation now thinks that the special edition is better than the original theatrical cut? I'll be curious to hear what you think. Here's another one that I have asked somebody else, I'm sure, or I was planning to. We're less today, but a couple of years ago, the whole DLC freemium pay-to-win model for a lot of gaming was really, really prevalent. I think it's still there. I know Fortnite, for example, is huge, and Overwatch and all that kind of stuff. Get it for free, pay for all the DLC or all the extras, and in some cases it can be pay to win. It's just not something that I like. I don't support that business model. I don't like it. Give me the game, let me buy it, and then I get everything. But I'm also of the arcade generation where we walked to a venue, plunked a quarter in, or in your case 10p I suppose, and played a game, and then to keep playing the game you had to put in another coin. How is that different from the freemium model? There are those who would argue, hey, you're not in any position to argue. Your generation had to keep putting money into a game in order to keep playing it. Why is that any different from Fortnite? What do you think, Del? I'm curious to your perspective. And on the last question, this is a big one about perspective. The producer of Final Fantasy, and I'm going to butcher this name, Naoki Yoshida, I hope. He doesn't like, he recently did an interview and he said he doesn't like the term JRPG. It is something that's been around for 30 odd years. We've talked about Final Fantasy and various others as being JRPGs, Japanese role-playing games. He thinks, because in Japan they're just called role-playing games. Why has it got this J moniker? Why are you sort of nailing it to one region of the world? That's kind of negative. It has a negative connotation, and why are you pegging it to Japan specifically? And I watched a YouTube video, and the host on that had a really interesting point because they were from the UK, and they said, if you think about it, back in the late 80s when you had a lot of stuff coming out for the Commodore 64, basically any of the stuff that Alan Stewart's playing on his streams, like any of those, China Miners or what's the Eggy one? Tell me, what's the name of that Eggy character? Oh, this guy here. Anyway, those games, those are kind of very British. There's a very British style to those games in that era. But we don't call them Brit action games or BA games, British action games. I thought it was a very interesting perspective of if this guy is sort of arguing against using the term JRPG, why did we not similarly address British style games, especially in the Commodore 64, BBC Micro, Sinclair ZX Spectrum days? Why were those games, which are very clearly British, and I've played a few of them, why did we never attach a British moniker to them? And do you have any thoughts or opinions or questions about that? So, what do you think, Del? I'm curious. As a Brit player of that era, what did you think? So, I believe that's it. Yes, so there's 10 different questions. I'm going to write them all down below so that you can read them a little more coherently than my rambling. But yeah, anybody who else wants to answer or have an opinion on it, please feel free. I love discussing these things and sending these questions out. And again, if you're interested in another variation on the Friday Waffle, where you just hear somebody talking to you directly, delboy3K1 is on board that stuff. And I like his channel and I recommend him, so I'm going to give Delboy a shout out. Please go check him out. And I look forward to seeing what answers he has to these questions. Okay, well, Spidey and I are going to take off now, so until next time, we'll see you down the rabbit hole.